Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, dear Prabhu, for that very kind introduction. And before we begin, I would like to chant the Mangalacharan prayers, seek auspiciousness from our spiritual superiors, and get started in our today's discussion. Om Jnanathimiranthasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajevam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadhi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha Ananda Leelamaya Vigrahaya Hemavadivya Chavisundaraya Tasmai Mahaprema Rasapradaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Before I begin, I would want to prostrate myself 1,000,000 times at the lotus feet of Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Paribrajakacharya Nitya Leela Pravishta Shri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, because of whose compassion we have got this very rare fruit of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita that extols the glories of Vraja Bhakti, that extols the glories of Vraja Prem. So I offer my obeisances to Srila Prabhupada for very kindly benedicting this world with the English version of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita that was never given in the past. It's very interesting that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who is the Guru Maharaj, or who is also the father of Srila Saraswati Thakur, he's the father of Srila Saraswati Thakur, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for him to find a Bengali edition of Chaitanya Charitamrita in Bengal. So a Bengali edition of Chaitanya Charitamrita in Bengal, it took Bhaktivinoda Thakur 8 years to find that copy. So difficult. And that same Chaitanya Charitamrita in English language has been available to all of us in just about $150 or so. And we also have the Veda base. If someone doesn't want the book edition, they also have the free edition in the form of Veda base. So we are so grateful and thankful to His Divine Grace for very kindly giving this rare fruit that has Vraj Bhakti in it in the form of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Secondly, I want to express my gratitude to Acharya Nidhi Prabhu and all the devotees at ISKCON of Calgary. Thank you so much for very kindly inviting me to your Sangha. I don't know how I can add value. I don't know how I can add substance to this discussion, but whatever I have heard from my superiors like Srila Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada and all the wonderful glorious disciples of Prabhupada, whatever I've heard from them, I will be presenting the same. So if there is anything good inspirational that comes up in the discussion, the whole and soul credit goes to our predecessor acharyas. And if there is any flaw that is there in the discussion, I request devotees to very kindly, as Saragrahi Vaishnavas, to kindly forgive and forget itself here in the discussion. So I offer my respectful obeisances to all the devotees. Kindly pray for me, kindly bless me, so that I can speak some favorable words in the glorification of today's topic. Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So I was asked to speak on the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Acharya Nidhi Prabhu gave me a section of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and this is Adi Leela, chapter 1, text 75. So we are going to read from 75 through 78. So 75, 76, 77, and 78, 4 verses. Text 75. Anekatra prakatata rupasyaikasya yaikada sarvata tat swarupaiva saprakasha itiryate. Translation: if numerous forms, all equal in their features, are displayed simultaneously, such forms are called as Prakasha Vigraha of the Lord. Text 76. Ekai Vigraha Kintu Akare Hai Ana Aneka Prakasha Haya Vilasa Tara Nama. But when the numerous forms are slightly different from one another, they are called as Vilasa Vigraha. Text 77. Swarupam Anayakaram Yat Tasya Bhati Vilasata Prayenatma Samam Shaktya Savilaso Nigadyate. Where the Lord displays numerous forms which are different, with different features, by his inconceivable potency, such forms are called as Vilasa Vigraha. Text 78, and the last for today. Yaiche Baladeva Paravyome Narayana Yaiche Vasudeva Pradyumnadi Sankarshana. Examples of such Vilasa Vigraha are Baladev, Narayan in Vaikuntha Dham, and the Chatur Vyuha, that is Vasudev, Shankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. So here we find that from text 75 through text 78 that we have, it's a philosophical discussion. And before we get into that, there is a very nice, interesting story that Bhaktivinoda Thakur presents in his book called as Navadvip Dham Mahatmya. Once in a particular place called as Naimasharanya. Now this is not the Naimasharanya where Suta Goswami spoke the Srimad Bhagavatam to Shaunakadi Rishi. Just like we have a Naimasharanya there, similarly there is also a Naimasharanya in a place called as Navadvip. Navadvip has Naimasharanya in it. Just like Vrindavan has all the pastime places like Badrinath and Kedarnath and so on and so forth. Similarly, Navadvip Dham also has all the pastime places in it. And one of the pastime places that is there in Navadvip is called as Naimasharanya. So once in this place of Naimasharanya, Suta Goswami was speaking Gaur Katha to Shaunakadi Rishi. We see the same Suta Goswami spoke Bhagavatam to Shaunakadi Rishis in Naimasharanya. Similarly, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that same Suta Goswami spoke to the same Shaunakadi Rishi, but this time there was a difference. This time he was speaking Gaur Katha. He was speaking about Chaitanya Charitamrita. And now when this discussion was going on of jam-packed assembly, when everyone was present, at that time, Lord Shiva, he heard that Gaur Katha is going on. So Lord Shiva immediately, he sat on his order carrier. What is the order carrier of Lord Shiva? Nandi. So immediately, Lord Shiva sat on his order carrier, that is Nandi, and he decided to go to Naimasharanya of Navadvip to hear Gaur Katha from Suta Goswami. So all this while everything was going good. He sat on the order carrier and he was going his way. But after he reached a particular point, Lord Shiva realized that his Nandi is very slow. The speed in which the Nandi was going, Lord Shiva feared that probably by the time he reaches Naimasharanya, the Gaur Katha will be done. So he was thinking to himself, how can I march my way? How can I speed up? So he parked his Nandi to the side and he went to Brahmaji. And he said, oh Brahmaji, I have a problem. Brahmaji said, what happened? And Lord Shiva explained the whole thing. And he said, my Nandi is very slow. If in this speed, if I go to Naimasharanya, I fear Gaur Katha will be done. So Brahmaji said, why have you come here? How can I help you? How can I serve you? And at that time, Lord Shiva, he says that, oh Brahmaji, you have Hamsa, you have Swan, and the Swan can fly. So naturally, it is faster than the Nandi that I have. So my only request is if you can give that Swan, I can sit on the back of that Swan and fly my way to Naimasharanya and hear Gaur Katha for 7 days. And once that is done, be rest assured, I will give the Swan back. So Brahmaji agreed. And Lord Shiva sat on the order carrier of Brahmaji, that is the Swan, and he flew his way to Naimasharanya of Navadvip Dham. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, sitting far behind, away from the assembly, Lord Shiva was sitting and hearing Gaur Katha, so much so that he was taking notes. He was taking notes about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as to what are the pastimes Gauranga Mahaprabhu is going to perform. And finally, after 7 days, when the Gaur Katha was done, Lord Shiva again went back to his Kailas. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he's explaining this pastime in Navadvip Dham Mahatmya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes this point that this is how a devotee should be. This is how eager, this is how enthusiastic a devotee should be to hear about the Supreme Lord. Utsahat, as Rupa Goswami says, Utsahat Nischaya Dhairya. There has to be enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is the life and soul of bhakti. If we are not enthusiastic on this path of bhakti, we do not make any progress on this path. So very interesting that Lord Shiva is teaching us through his personal example. He is teaching us how enthusiastic we have to be on this path. And it's often seen that when leelas or when pastimes are discussed, the attention is sky high. But the same when tattva is described, when philosophy is described, rather than shravanam, it becomes snoranam. People doze off in that katha whenever tattva or siddhanta is described. So Kaviraj Goswami very beautifully, he says, Siddhanta boliye chitte na kara alas, iha hoite Krishna lage sudrida manas. Kaviraj Goswami says, when tattva siddhanta is described, na kara alas. Don't be lazy when tattva siddhanta is described. Who is saying? Kaviraj Goswami is saying. Iha hoite Krishna lage sudrida manas. When we sincerely and attentively, without snoranam, when shravanam is done attentively about the tattva siddhanta of the Supreme Lord, then what happens? Iha hoite Krishna lage sudrida manas. Then the heart is firmly fixed in the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. Because hearing pastimes is good on one level, but if we cannot decipher the tattva siddhanta from those pastimes, then it's nothing different from a Harry Potter novel. So the pastimes are presented so that we extract the tattva siddhanta out of it. And here in this section today that we have, we see predominantly it is tattva siddhanta. From text 75 through text 78, it is tattva siddhanta. So we will be trying to make this conversation a little easier so that we can understand what Kaviraj Goswami is trying to present in these 4 verses. We see Sri Krishna when he is there in the land of Vrindavan. The Supreme Lord is there in Gopa Vesh, His form is that of Gopa, and he's also as Gopa Avesh. His mood is also that of a Gopa. Gopa Vesh and Gopa Avesh. The form is that of a Gopa, and the mood that he carries is also that of a Gopa. Gopa Vesh, Venukar, Navakishore, Natavar. These are 4 attributes or 4 characteristics or 4 qualities that Krishna in Vrindavan has. What are these 4? Gopa Vesh. His form is that of a Gopa. Second, Venukar. He has a flute. Krishna plays the Venu. Third, Navakishore. Krishna is ever youthful. And fourth and the last, Natavar. Krishna is the best among dancers. So 4 qualities that sums up Krishna in Vrindavan. Gopavesh, Venukar, Navakishore, Natavar. And we find the same point is made even in the section of Venugit. When Srila Shukadev Goswami is speaking about Venugit in Canto 10, Chapter 21, there in text 5, he describes the form of Krishna in Vrindavan. Srila Shukadev Goswami very beautifully, he says, Barha Pidam Natavara Karnayo Karnikaram Vibratvasana Kanaka Kapisham Vaijayantim Chamalam Randran Venu Radhara Sudayan Apurayan Gopa Vrindaye Vrindaranyam Swapada Ramanam Pravishad Gita Kirtihi. 10:21:5, he describes the form of Krishna in Vrindavan. He says first, Barha Pidam. Krishna in Vrindavan has a crown of peacock feathers. Why does Krishna wear a crown of peacock feathers? We see Krishna doesn't wear a crown of chicken feathers, or Krishna doesn't wear a crown of any other animal. It's only and only peacock. Why? Because our acharyas give multiple reasons. And one of the reasons our acharyas give is they say that the peacocks apparently had heard Krishna say Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. Krishna, we see the Bhagavad Gita 9:26. He says that Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhakti Uparitam Asnami Prayatatmanaha. Krishna says that if someone wants to conquer me, they can offer all 4 or any one of these 4. Patram, that is leaf, Pushpam, flower, Phalam, fruit, and Toyam, water. So when the peacocks heard this, the peacocks became very dejected. They said, my dear Lord, we don't have Patram, we don't have Pushpam, we don't have Phalam, and my dear Lord, we don't even have Toyam, we don't have anything to give you, my dear Lord. But just like we take the waters of Ganga and offer it back to Ganga, similarly, my dear Lord, these feathers are given by you, and all that we can offer back to you are these feathers. So, my dear Lord, whatever you have given us, we are offering it back to you, because we don't have Patram, we don't have Pushpam, we don't have Phalam, and we don't have Toyam also. So the peacocks, whatever they had, they gave everything to Krishna. So in fact, the peacocks, they symbolize Atmanivedanam. They completely surrendered whatever they had to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. And the Lord is bound by seeing this. He's bound by love. The peacocks didn't have anything but offered whatever the Lord has given, and the Lord gets bound. And for the rest of eternity, to show to the world as to how the peacocks symbolize Atmanivedanam, the Lord is very nicely having a crown of peacock feathers. Barha Pidam and Natavara Vapu. Krishna is the best among dancers in Vrindavan. When Krishna dances, the demigods, the Apsaras, the Gandharvas, and even Lord Shiva, who is such a great dancer, even he picks up his book and starts taking notes. When Krishna starts dancing, it's show time. They all stop dancing. The Apsaras and Gandharvas, they all stop dancing and they take notes, because the steps that Krishna demonstrates, they have not seen those steps before. So very beautifully, they're all taking notes, seeing Krishna's dancing. And it's very interesting. that once a brahmachari, or in fact once a devotee, he came in touch with this Krishna consciousness movement. And when he came in touch with this Krishna conscious movement, he was convinced of the whole philosophy. But there was one problem. And that problem was not a problem, but as in his own words, as he expressed, he was a devout Lord Shiva follower. You see, even now in India, it's somehow prevalent that people worship Lord Shiva more than they worship Lord Krishna. So this person was also Lord Shiva follower. And when he wanted to join the Krishna consciousness movement, the local devotees, they said that, oh, you cannot worship Lord Shiva. You are worshipping Krishna. Krishna is everything. He is Sarveshwara. So there is no need to worship Lord Shiva. And this newcomer, he felt very dejected. So he didn't know what to do. So he went up to Srila Radhanath Swami Maharaj. And when he went up to Srila Radhanath Swami Maharaj, he asked Srila Radhanath Maharaj, said, Maharaj, this is what the local devotees are saying. So do I have to give up the worship of Lord Shiva? And when Maharaj heard this, Maharaj said, you can worship Lord Shiva. That is completely fine. You don't have to give up the worship of Lord Shiva. You can worship Lord Shiva. At the same time, you can worship Lord Krishna also. So this devotee was very happy. And then he joined the temple as a celibate, as a monk, as a brahmachari. And after a few months, Radhanath Maharaj again called him. So when this brahmachari went back to Srila Radhanath Maharaj, now Srila Radhanath Maharaj told this devotee that you're worshipping Krishna. Krishna is everything in Kali. And Maharaj very beautifully gave this verse of Yatha Tarur Moola Nishesha Yena Tripyanti Tatskanda Bhujopi Shakha. The famous verse from the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Shukadev Goswami says, when you water the roots, the whole tree is satisfied. Similarly, Maharaj beautifully explained that when you worship Krishna, even Lord Shiva is satisfied. Lord Shiva is the best among dancers, but Krishna is even greater than Lord Shiva when it comes to dancing. And Krishna is greater than Lord Shiva in all aspects possible. So this devotee was finally convinced, and he gave up the worship of Lord Shiva and full-fledged started worshipping Sri Krishna. And dear devotees, we would be fascinated to know that this brahmachari is none other than His Grace Radhesham Prabhu. When Radhesham Prabhu joined the movement, this was his first initial interactions with Srila Radhanath Swami Maharaj. And Radhesham Prabhu in his own words was explaining as to how he was a Lord Shiva follower, but later got transformed into that of a Krishna follower. So Krishna here is Natavara Vapu. He's the best among dancers. He's better than even Lord Shiva in that of dancing. So we find that Krishna in Vrindavan has these attributes. He has a flute, he has a Vaijayanti Mala, he has a crown of peacock feathers, he has a Pitambar Vesh, a yellow garment. And it's very interesting that Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati, he says that once our Sri Krishna of Vrindavan was going out, he was going for Gocharan Leela, along with the cows and calves and all of his friends. Krishna was going to the forest. And when Krishna was going to the forest, Radharani, from a distance, she saw Krishna. And when Radharani from a distance saw Krishna, Krishna also saw Srimati Radharani. And at that time, Prabodhananda Saraswati describes the whole scene. Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati describes, he says, Venum karannipatitam skalitam shikhandam brastancha pita vasanam vrajaraja sunu tasya kataksha saraghata vimurchitasya tam radhika paricharami kadarasena. What happened at that moment? Venum karannipatitam, that flute that Krishna proudly carries in his hand. Venum karannipatitam. Like in Hindi, we say patan hona, which means to fall down. That flute which was there in Krishna's hand, that he proudly takes, just by the vision of Srimati Radharani, just by Radharani's sidelong glance, that flute from Krishna's hand fell down to the ground. Vedum Karanipatitam Skalitam Shikhandam. And the Shikhandam, that is a crown of peacock feathers, that also fell down to the ground. Dear devotees, this is just one sidelong glance of Radharani. That is her power. Just by one sidelong glance, Krishna's flute starts slipping from his hand. The peacock feathers fall to the ground. Venum Karanipatitam Skalitam Shikhandam Brastancha Pita Vasanam. And Krishna's upper cloth that he wears. Krishna has a nice upper cloth that he wears. Just like he has Pitambar Vesha, yellow garment. Similarly, up above on his shoulder, Krishna has a nice cloth. But now that cloth also started slipping. The flute was already slipping. The peacock feathers fell to the ground and the upper cloth also started slipping. Vrajaraja Sunu, the son of the king of Vrindavan. Oh, he was losing his flute, he was losing his peacock feathers, and he was losing his upper cloth. Tasya Kataksha Saraghata Vimurchitasya. When Radharani just Kataksha, when she saw a sidelong glance at Krishna, we see we have Radha Kripa Kataksha that Lord Shiva has composed, which means the sidelong glance of Srimati Radharani. So similarly, Prabodhananda Saraswati is saying, when that same Srimati Radharani looked at Krishna, it was a sidelong glance. It was not even a complete glance, just a sidelong glance at Krishna. Tasya Kataksha Saraghata Vimurchitasya. Bhagavan Vimurchit ho gaye, which means the Lord fell unconscious to the ground. The flute fell down, the upper cloth fell down, the peacock feather, the crown of peacock feather that he has, that also fell down. And the icing on the cake was the whole Lord of Vrindavan. He fell down to the ground just by the sidelong glance of Radharani. So Krishna is great, but Radharani is even more greater. In all other places, there is king and there is kingdom. But in Gaudiya tradition, there is no king and there is no kingdom. There is queen and there is queendom. Radharani is the queen and Vrindavan Dham is our queendom. So Shri Krishna in Vrindavan, the point I'm trying to emphasize here is this is the form of Shri Krishna in the land of Vrindavan. Gopavesh, Venukar, Navakishore, and Natavar. These are the four attributes. And this form of the Supreme Lord is called as Swayam Roop Krishna. The Mool Roop or the Swayam Roop Krishna, the original form of Godhead that is displayed in Vrindavan is called as Swayam Roop Krishna, where he has a flute, where he has peacock feathers, where he has a yellow garment, and his mood is also that of a Gopa, where he goes out to herd the cows. We see during Rai Ramananda Samvad, during Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's famous discussion with Ramananda Rai. In that discussion, when the discussion took place on the banks of Godavari, very beautifully, in between the discussion, we find that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in order to test Ramananda Rai, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu starts switching form. And Ramananda Rai very beautifully, he says, Pahila dekila tumar sannyasi swarup. First I saw you in the form of a sannyasi. Ebe moi dekhe Shama Gopa Roop. But now I am seeing you in the form of a Shama Gopa Roop. I am seeing you in the form of that of Krishna. My dear Lord, first I saw you as a sannyasi, but now I am seeing you as that of Gopa. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was switching constantly. First he was a sannyasi, then he became a Gopa, then he became a sannyasi, then he became a Gopa. And Ramananda Rai, exactly he understood this. So he tells Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Pahila dekhila tumar sannyasi swarup. First I saw you as sannyasi. Ebe moi dekhe Shama Gopa Roop. But now I am seeing you as Shama Gopa Roop, in the form of a Gopa, that is Krishna and Vrindavan. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hears this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, oh Ramananda Rai, no, you are very exalted. You are so exalted that you are able to see Krishna everywhere. But I am not demonstrating that form. But actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was switching both the forms. But Mahaprabhu wanted to give the credit back to Ramananda Rai. So there also this point is made that Swayam Roop Krishna means he has Gopa Vesh which means the form is that of Gopa, and he has Gopa Avesh. His mood is also that of a Gopa. You see, similarly, when Krishna was leaving the land of Vrindavan, of course, Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. Krishna in the 11th canto, he tells Uddhava, Vrindavanam parityajya padam ekam na gacchati. He says, hey Uddhav, please note that I don't keep a step outside the land of Vrindavan. But in the Prakat Leela, in the Naravat Leela that Krishna performs, in the human-like pastimes, when Akrura came to take Krishna and Balaram away, so at that time, Mother Yashoda, due to her motherly love, she didn't want Krishna to go. In fact, even Rohini didn't want Balaram to go. Which mother would want her children to go away? So Yashoda Maya told Krishna that, Krishna, please stay here. We can send someone else to Mathura. And when Krishna was talking to Mother Yashoda, Krishna finally, he says that, oh Maya, you want Krishna to stay here. Please describe what are the attributes of Krishna. What are the things that decide, or what are the things that Krishna has in particular? So when Mother Yashoda heard this, she said, Krishna? Oh, Krishna has a flute. So Krishna immediately removed the flute from his waist and kept it at the lotus feet of Mother Yashoda. And Krishna said, what else? And Mother Yashoda said, oh, Krishna has peacock feathers. So Krishna immediately removed his crown of peacock feathers and kept it at the lotus feet of Mother Yashoda. And Krishna said, what else? And Mother Yashoda said, oh, Krishna has Vaijayanti Mala. Krishna removed his Vaijayanti Mala and kept it at the lotus feet of Maya Yashoda. Krishna said, what else, my dear mother? Mother Yashoda said, oh, Krishna means butter pot. There has to be makhan. Krishna removed the butter pot and kept it at the lotus feet of Maya Yashoda. And finally, Krishna said, is this all? And Mother Yashoda said, yes, Krishna. So Krishna said, if these are the things that classify Krishna and Vrindavan, all of them are there in front of you. Now can I go to Mathura? And when Mother Yashoda heard this, she still had tears from her eyes. She said, Krishna, no, please stay back. Please don't go. I fear that you will never come back. So there also Acharyas comment that Krishna in Vrindavan, the Swayamrup Krishna, has these qualities. He has a flute, he has Vaijayanti Mala, he has a Pitambar Vesh, he has peacock feather, and fundamentally he has Gopa Vesh and he has Gopa Avesh. The form is that of Gopa and the mood is that of a Gopa. So now this is Swayamrup Krishna. Now, when this Krishna decides to expand, we have something called as Prabha Prakash. It's called as Prabha Prakash or also called as Prakasha Vigraha. We see in text 75, Prabhupada is using the word Prakasha Vigraha. So when this Swayamrup Krishna decides to expand, he expands as Prabha Prakash or Prakasha Vigraha. Now, what does this expansion mean? What does Prakasha Vigraha mean, or what does Prabha Prakash mean? Well, fundamentally, the Krishna, where the mood and form is the same as Swayamrup Krishna. Like, for example, we see that during the start of Rasa dance in Canto 10, Chapter 29, Shukadev Goswami very beautifully, he says that Bhagavan Apita Ratri Sharadutfulla Mallika Viksharantu Manas Chakre Yoga Maya Mupashrite. In the start of the Rasa dance, Shukadev Goswami says, who is performing the Rasa dance? Who has played the flute to invite the gopis? Bhagavan. Bhagavan Apita Ratri. On that night, on the banks of Yamuna in Vamshivat, Bhagavan played the flute. You see, it's very interesting. Shukadev Goswami could have said Krishna played the flute, but he says no, Bhagavan played the flute, meaning to show to everyone that this pastime is not performed by an 8-year-old normal boy. It is performed by Bhagavan himself. And it's very interesting in the second line, Bhagavan Apita Ratri Sharad Utfulla Mallika. Shukadev Goswami says, on that night, During Sharad Rutu, the Mallika flowers, they were blossoming. Mallika flowers means jasmine flowers. Now, what is so fascinating about this? The fascinating point here is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that Mallika flowers never blossom during Sharad Rutu. The jasmine flowers, they never blossom during Sharad Rutu. But if jasmine flowers are blossoming during Sharad Rutu, it only means that this pastime is so glorious. Why? Because unseen events, unseen circumstances are being witnessed. The flowers that don't blossom during a particular season, those flowers are also blossoming. Why? Bhagavan Apitaratri. Because on that night, Bhagavan decided to have a rasa dance. So hearing the flute, when all the Brajagopis came, we see Krishna performed his rasa dance. And in that rasa dance, we see there is a nice photo that we have in ISKCON where Krishna has expanded himself and he is dancing with all the Vrajagopis. So there we find when Krishna is dancing with all the gopis, does Krishna have a flute? Does Krishna have peacock feather? Yes. Does Krishna have Pitambar Vesh? Yes. So his form is that of Swayamrup Krishna. He has Venukar, he is Navakishore, he is Natavar, he has a peacock feather, he has a flute, he has Pitambar Vesh, a yellow garment. So the form is that of Swayamrup Krishna, as we discussed earlier. And similarly, his mood is also similar to that of Swayamrup Krishna. He is in Gopa Vesh and he is in Gopa Avesh, which means when Swayamrup Krishna expands himself with the same mood and same form, that is called as Prabha Prakash or Prakash Vigraha. And what is the example? Rasa dance. In the rasa dance, Krishna is in the mood of Gopa. At the same time, Krishna is having a flute. Krishna is having the same bluish black complexion. Krishna is having peacock feathers, and Krishna is having a yellow garment. So when Swayamrup Krishna expands himself with the same form and same mood, this is called as Prabha Prakash or Prakasha Vigraha, as Prabhupada explains. Now, this same Swayamrup Krishna, he has another expansion also. So Swayamrup Krishna, when he expands with the same mood and same form, it is called as Prabha Prakash or Prakash Vigraha. But now when the Swayamrup Krishna expands with different mood and different form, that is called as Vaibhav Prakash. Where the form and mood are different, they are called as Vaibhav Prakash, or also called as Vilasa Vigraha. We see in text 76 and 77, Prabhupada says Vilasa Vigraha. Vilasa Vigraha is also called as Vaibhav Prakash. So when the form and mood are different from that of Swayamrup Krishna, it is called as Vaibhav Prakash or Vilasa Vigraha. What are the examples? The first example is that of Krishna in Kurukshetra. When Krishna is speaking the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, is he in the form of a Gopa? No, because we see Krishna is having, there's no peacock feather, but Krishna is having a nice mukut. He's having mukut dhari. So the form is not that of Krishna. Krishna is there in a battlefield and he's driving the chariot. And Gopa Avesh is also not there. He's not in the mood of Gopa. He's in the mood of Kshatriya. He's in the mood of fighting. He's encouraging Arjuna to fight. So the form is not that of Gopa and the mood is also not that of Gopa. It is the same Krishna, but the form and mood is different. And that is why the Krishna who spoke Bhagavad Gita is an example of Vaibhav Prakash or Vilasa Vigraha. The form is not that of Gopa and the mood is also not that of Gopa. The mood is that of a Kshatriya, that of a warrior, that of fighting. So to reiterate, Swayamrup Krishna is that form of Krishna who is there in Vrindavan, who has Gopavesh, Venukar, Navakishore, Natavar. That form of Krishna who has Gopavesh, the form is that of Gopa and the mood is also that of a Gopa. that of a cowherd boy. That is Swayambhu Krishna. But when that Swayambhu Krishna expands with the same mood and same form to dance with all the Vraja Gopis on the night of Sharad Purnima, that is an example of Prabha Prakash, or also called as Prakasha Vigraha, as text 75 explains. But when that same Swayambhu Krishna, he decides to expand with a different mood and a different form, that is called as Vaibhav Prakash, or also called as Vilasa Vigraha. And what is the example? Krishna in Kurukshetra, when he's speaking the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, the form is not that of Gopa and the mood is also not that of Gopa. So now a question arises, does Krishna have a Vaibhav Prakash expansion in Vrindavan? We saw that Krishna has a Prabha Prakash expansion in Vrindavan in the form of Krishna dancing with the gopis. But does Krishna also have Vaibhav Prakash, or also called as Vilas Prakash, in Vrindavan? And the answer is yes. Krishna also has an expansion in Vrindavan in the form of Vaibhav Prakash. And that personality who denotes Vaibhav Prakash, where the form and mood is different than that of Krishna, is Balaram, is Baladev. Does Balram have the same form as that of Krishna? No, because we find Krishna is Megha Sham, he's bluish black. But Balaram is like a spring cloud, he's white in complexion. So the form is different. Is the mood same? No. Krishna has Sevya Abhiman. Krishna expects everyone to serve him. Everyone should come and serve me. But Balaram has Sevak Abhiman. Balaram decides or is in the mood of service. Krishna is in the mood of everyone serving me. Balaram is in the mood of I want to serve Krishna. So the form is different because Balaram is white in complexion while Krishna is dark in complexion. At the same time, the mood is also different. Krishna has Sevya Abhiman, Balaram has Sevak Abhiman. Krishna wants everyone to serve him. Balaram is in the mood of service to Sri Krishna. So for this reason, Balaram is the only example. Sri Balaram Prabhu or Sri Baladev Prabhu is the only example of Vaibhav Prakash or Vilasa Vigraha, form of the Supreme Lord, where the form and mood is different. Only example in the land of Vrindavan. Outside of Vrindavan, you have Krishna of Dwaraka and Krishna of Kurukshetra and so many other examples. But in the land of Vrindavan, Balaram is the only example where the form and mood is different. And we see Balaram is so much in the mood of service. He wants to serve the Supreme Lord so much that he serves the Supreme Lord in all the 5 rasas. Very rare do we find anyone serving the Lord in all the 5 rasas. Balaram is an example. How does Balaram serve the Supreme Lord in all 5 rasas? In the mood of Shantaras, in the mood of neutrality. He serves the Supreme Lord in the form of asana, vasana, bhushana, padukas. Balaram expands as umbrella. He expands as the footwear. He expands as the sitting place, so on and so forth. So these are all examples of Shantaras. It is Balaram who is expanding. Then in the mood of Dasyaras, Balaram is there as Anantashesh. As Anantashesh, on his hoods, he is holding multiple planets and universes and galaxies on top of his head. So that is the mood of a servant. So in the mood of Shantaras, Balaram is serving as asana, vasana, bhushana, paduka, etc. In the mood of Dasyaras, he is holding all the planets in the form of Anantashesh. In the mood of Sakhiras, well, he's Balaram, so there are Sakhya pastimes that he performs. Balaram also serves in the mood of Vatsalyaras because Balaram is the older brother. Sometimes he chastises Krishna. He tells Krishna, hey Krishna, you don't go here. You go there. Because sometimes Krishna is so naughty that Krishna would climb up a tree and he would pick a fruit. So Balaram being the older brother, in the mood of Vatsalya Ras, he would chastise Krishna by saying, Krishna, don't eat that fruit. It's possible that some poisonous snake would have bitten that fruit and the poison would be there in that fruit. So, Krishna, if you eat that fruit, I fear something will happen to you. So, Balaram also exhibits Vatsalya Ras as that of an older brother. And we see Balaram is always there with Krishna. Wherever Krishna goes, Balaram is always there. But there are only 2 instances where Balaram didn't go with Krishna. And the 2 instances why Balaram didn't go with Krishna was that day was Balaram's birthday. It was his happy birthday. So Balaram was staying home. Rohini Maya wanted to celebrate Balaram Prabhu's birthday. So Balaram did not go with Krishna. And dear devotees, the 2 instances when Balaram did not go with Krishna, those were the 2 times when Kaliya and Aghasur came to Vrindavan. Both these instances we find Balaram was not there in the whole scene because it was his birthday, he was staying home. So he's always there as in the mood of Vatsalya, as an older caring brother. He's always there. But 2 instances where he was not there was the pastime of Kaliya and the pastime of Aghasur. And we find that when the Lord is celebrating his birthday, that is very glorious. Balaram Purnima, or when Krishna, when he appears, that is Krishna Janmashtami, or when Prabhupada appears, that is Prabhupada's appearance day, Vyasa Puja, or our spiritual masters, they appear, that is Vyasa Puja. But actually Bhagavatam describes that someone who is still conditioned, someone who is not pure, there is nothing happy about a happy birthday. Tasyarte yakshano nita uttama shloka vartayat. Srimad Bhagavatam describes very beautifully that with every rising and setting of the sun, we are actually getting 1 day closer to death. With every rising and setting of the sun, we are entering the jaws of death. We are entering the jaws of the crocodile, which is called as death. So there is actually nothing happy about it, because with every year, one year, we are getting close to death. So there is nothing happy about it. But the only thing happy in a happy birthday is we are 1 year closer to Radha Shyamasundar in some lifetime. We don't know which lifetime, but with every happy birthday that comes in our life, we are getting 1 year closer to Radha Shyamasundar in some lifetime. So that's the only thing happy about a happy birthday. But apart from that, we see there is nothing happy to celebrate in a happy birthday. Likewise, we find that the Western tradition is during a celebration, there is the cake, and in that cake you have candles. And it is so against the Vedic tradition that when you have the candle, we find that the candle is blown off with the mouth. The kids, or sometimes even the adults, we find that with the mouth, we just blow off that candle. And actually, this is not correct. Why? Because that fire is Agni Devata. That fire is very potent. It is very powerful. That is the same fire we use for our initiation vows. That is the same fire we use for our marriage vows. That is the same fire we use for cooking and serving the Supreme Lord. But when that fire is blown off with our mouth, it is so abominable, because when we blow off some particles of spit or saliva, it will definitely touch the fire. Just like it is abominable to, if we have a deity form of the Lord, and rather than showing the charmer, we go and if we blow off the Supreme Lord, that is abominable. That is seva aparad, that is deity aparad. Similarly, Agni is Agni Devata. He needs respect. He needs to be respected. So when we blow off from our mouth, it is very abominable. At the same time, if someone gives the reason that, oh, we are not blowing, this from our hands, we are extinguishing that fire. Well, the another point that can be used here is our Gaudiya tradition is to go from darkness to light. Asatoma sadgamaya tamasoma jyotirgamaya. We go from darkness to light. But when fire is lit, we don't extinguish that fire. We don't blow off that fire. That is going from lightness to darkness. That is not what Prabhupada taught us. Our aim is to go from darkness to light and not to go from lightness, or not to go from light to darkness. So just as a side point, we were talking about Balaram's happy birthday, Balaram's appearance day. Sometimes when we celebrate our birthdays, we have this candle. And I've personally heard this from my worshipable spiritual master as to how we should actually not be doing it, because fire is fire devata. At the same time, we don't go from light to darkness. Our philosophy is to go from darkness to light. So just to reiterate, we were talking about as to how Balaram serves in all the 5 rasas as Shanta, Asana, Vasana, Bhushana. In the mood of Dasya, as Ananta Shesh, he holds all the planets. In Sakhiras, he plays with Krishna. In Vatsalya, he is there with Krishna as older brother, sometimes chastising and sometimes taking care. And in the mood of Madhurya, that same Balaram expands as Ananga Manjari, who is Radharani's younger sister. So in this way, Balaram has Sevak Abhiman. He's always in the mood of service to the Supreme Lord. And for this reason, Acharya say, Balaram comes in the category of Vaibhav Prakash or Vilasa Vigraha. If we see text 78, Prabhupada clearly says that the examples of Vaibhav Prakash or Vilasa Vigraha is Baladev Prabhu. And why Baladev? Because his form is different, his mood is different. So just to quickly summarize whatever we discussed today, we started the discussion by Swayam Roop Krishna. What does Swayam Roop Krishna have? Gopavesh, Venukar, Navakishore, Natavar. He has the form of Gopa. He has the mood of that of Gopa. He plays the flute. He is the best among dancers. And he is always youthful. But when that Gopavesh and Gopa Avesh Krishna, Swayam Roop Krishna, he expands with the same form and same mood in order to increase the rasa of the pastime. It is nothing called as Prabha Prakash, or also called as Prakasha Vigraha. What is the example? Krishna expanding during rasa dance to dance with the gopis. And that same Krishna, when he again expands with different form and different mood, that is an example of Vaibhav Prakash, or also called as Vilasa Vigraha. What is the example? Outside of Vrindavan, the example is Dwarkadish Krishna or Kurukshetra Krishna, the Krishna who spoke Bhagavad Gita. But in the land of Vrindavan, the only example is Balaram Prabhu or Baladev Prabhu. In this way, we find text 75, 76, 77 and 78 fundamentally talk about Swayam Roop Krishna, Prabhav Prakash Krishna and Vaibhav Prakash Krishna. Having said this, I very humbly want to stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Shri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami ki jai. Patita Pavan Shila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON Calgary Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Dai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo.